open this. We'll open this hearing. I'll begin by reading the notice of public hearing. Notice is hereby given that the following hearing will be held in the Bonneville County Courthouse, 605 North Capitol Avenue, Idaho Falls, Idaho, August 15th, 2023 at 3 p.m. by the Bonneville County Commissioners for the purpose of a public hearing in relation to the application by Canyon Creek Retreat LLC and Steele-N-Jo's LLC for a rezone from Grazing G1 to Recreational Forestry RF zone. The general location is located at 1664 and 1672 Bone Road, Bonneville County, Idaho. There was a legal description published, and this was published in the Post-Register on July 29th, 2023. Those present are all three commissioners. Commissioner John Walker is attending by Zoom, Commissioner Brian Reed, myself, Commissioner Roger Christensen. Also, we have our administrative secretary will record for posterity that it's her birthday today. So happy birthday, Kayla.
Thank you.
And staff from Planning and Zoning, Gwen Rondo, I'll get it right one of these days, Michelle Hagan and Austin Black. So we'll begin by having staff present their staff report. We do have all of the minutes from the Planning and Zoning hearing along with the exhibits there. So without objection, I'll make those part of the public record. We do have those to review, so you don't need to repeat that testimony. We've already read it. We'd prefer you to keep this moving in an orderly way, to add anything you wish us to consider on that, and then we'll open it up for some public comment. So go ahead, Michelle. Okay.
Michelle Hagan with Bonneville County Planning and Zoning. This is an application by Amanda Lemire and Corey Steele of Canyon Creek Retreat and Steele-N-Jo LLC for zoning map amendment from G1 to RF zone. Property is located on the west side of Bone Road. This includes the historic Bone Store property. It is also 7.5 miles south from the intersection of Bone Road and Sunnyside. The request includes 3 parcels, which total approximately 10.738 acres. The land use designation is rural center. The proposed recreational forestry zone is one of the zones that is allowed to be considered within a rural center land use designation. However, that does not mean it should automatically be approved. The adjacent zoning districts are G1. The applicants included in their application a narrative and site plans regarding the request to rezone. The rural centers are on the land use map with the intent of being located in outlying locations which have traditionally been an activity center for the dispersed rural population. The Bone Rural Center is 1/2 mile in diameter and is centered around the Bone Store. The intent of rural centers is to allow business establishments which cater to regular needs of the surrounding rural residents or a community to conserve and to the traveling public. The comprehensive plan has 5 points, which include types of uses to be within a rural center. Point 3, maintain and foster social activities, community feeling, and local identity through appropriate land uses and activities. The comprehensive plan has compatibility decisions that should be considered in all map amendments. These include looking at compatibility to adjacent uses, as well as determining if the proposed change would create undue concentration of uses, which would destroy living quality, congest thoroughfares, or overload public facilities. Needs to be determined if the proposed change would result in items for consideration. The proposal must consider protecting the adjoining uses and compatibility policy. Infrastructure that is required or may be required is noted in the staff report and needs to be included with discussion. Fire safety is one of those items. The RF zone falls into the resort residential infrastructure requirements combined in the operating. In your review of this request, it needs to be considered if the area is appropriate for the RF zone within the rural center, as well as what would be appropriate infrastructure. We have received some exhibits from property owners, which were included in the packet. Those exhibits specifically are David Rockwood, Dale and Marla Meyer, and John Simmons. So the comments from Public Works were provided. Read those for the record if we like. They're already included as a record.
Yeah, I've read them.
Typical conditions for rezoning requests, the Planning Commission recommended approval by a 4-to-1 vote. Commissioner Steele opposed. Recommended with conditions. 1, there shall be a buffer fence, a minimum of 4-strand barbed wire fence around the entire perimeter of the property on 3 sides, with the exception that there is a full fence which would meet that requirement. 2, buffers where adjacent to G1 zoned property. This would include some type of landscaping to buffer the noise of concerts. 3, landscaping along the arterial road. 4, compliance with requirements of public works. 5, approval of the development plan for campground shall comply with the zoning ordinance. 6, plan for fire protection, which includes working with Henry's Fire Protection District, as well as working with Bonneville County. And 7, planning will be required. I have no further comments at this time.
Okay. Any questions, Commissioner Walker or Reed, at this time?
I guess the only question that I would have is it's G1 zoning all around this. So how is this not a spot zone?
So you have 2 LLCs that are part of the application, separate, and they are applying on one together on one application. So that is one way how we've addressed having the different ownership with spot zoning in the past, as well as we had, it was also part of the record of finding in fact that we indicated that we had with a different property, we had legal counsel on the types of spot zoning. So type 1 spot zoning, prohibited use versus type 2, it's the land use designation.
And will those be part of our record?
Yes, I believe they are.
Okay.
We can make it part of the record. It's the finding of fact from the Cromwell Trust rezone that was signed on March 22nd, 2023.
So any of this, that's why I need that.
Okay.
And essentially, the legal definition for spot zoning is if the land use allows it, and there's more than one property owner involved, then it can be considered spot zoning. So that kind of simplifies down what's in there, but that's what those 2 different types explain. So.
Which leads to my question on this map. You've got both applicants, and then you've got parcels 1, 2, and 3. Who are the owners of which parcels?
Steele-N-Jo LLC owned parcel 2 and 3.
Okay.
And parcel 1 is owned by the Canyon Creek Retreat LLC.
Okay, so
Who's the owner of Canyon Creek?
The Canyon Creek Retreat
another LLC.
Parcel 1. There are the same people own both LLCs.
But they're two separate legal entities, as we've looked at in other decisions before.
And we'll make these other decisions that refer to this part of the record. There's two I can think of. One was included in your packet. The other one would be
On First
controlling
Street.
east properties, and we'll put that in the record.
Okay. Because the distinction is as these develop, they could develop distinctly, but any of the conditions on one can't automatically be applied to the other. They have to both meet, whatever development agreements, whatever standards, whatever laws. Okay. So 1 and 2 are Steele-N-Jo's, 2 and 3 are Steele-N-Jo's, and 1 is Canyon Creek Retreat.
Correct.
Canyon Creek Retreat. I'm from Iona. Where's Canyon Creek? Okay. Any other questions? John?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Anything else you wish to add at this time? Okay, so we'll now ask for the owner or representative of the owners to present their case. Anything you want to add to what you've already testified to? State your name and address.
Amanda Jo Edelmeyer, 1672 Bone Road, Iona, Idaho, 83427. I was told we needed to address the concerns that were put in from the last landowners. So
I saw that you responded and addressed several of those. Are there any that you didn't address then that you want to address?
the only ones that we weren't aware of at the time of the meeting were the adverse property value and the increased emergency services and the confusion to the animals, the cutting of fences and damage of property and the noise pollution.
Okay.
And the water rights.
Okay, if you want to, and I'd encourage us to be just a touch more civil than what I read in the other hearing for all parties involved. So respectful, that's a better word.
I thought I was pretty respectable, but okay. So just to address those concerns, as far as the water rights go, we also own water rights to the Canyon Creek Springs. We have never altered or blocked or made mention of taking anyone's water.
Okay.
We only utilize what we own. So I want to take care of those concerns. We have no intentions of depriving any stock of their water. Beef is what's for dinner, right? The trespassing and the confusion of animals and cut fences and damaged property. We have never cut anyone's fence or damaged anyone's property or, to my knowledge, confused any animals or caused them due stress. We've had cows on our property that have caused us some undue stress, but we think that we're really good neighbors and we're very respectful of the land. We are huge advocates of environmental stewardship and land conservation and preservation. We're huge advocates of educating the public on how to utilize our public lands better and also how to be respectful of public lands. Some of the accusations that were put into there, I believe were unjust. I don't believe that those were caused by anyone who has been to our place or anyone that belongs to our family. We have no malice against the neighbors. We actually enjoy our neighbors and we get along really well with them. The noise pollution and the heavy traffic, I guess we would like those studies that show that we caused the noise pollution and the heavy traffic that has caused a lot of issues in Bone. To my knowledge, we haven't done that. Our neighbors that live closest to us, the Jollies and the Raffertys, have never come over and complained about the noise. We work pretty closely with everyone and we want them to feel welcome, and we're all about creating a community where people just get along and enjoy the fact that places like this can still exist. here. The adverse property value, I don't believe that our concerts or any of the activities that we're doing in Bone have an adverse effect on Mr. Myers' property value. I applaud them for working so hardly to, redo their buildings that they want to redo in their homes. To date, they're pretty dilapidated. I would say if there's an adverse effect on the property value, it might be the current condition of that property. The other question I would have, about if we're going to talk about adverse effects on property value would be the landfill that sits behind their house. Is it permitted, and have the hydraulic fluids been taken care of and all of that machinery according to the EPA regulations? Because PCBs are far more damaging to the aquifer and to the environment than a couple of guitar chords and people laughing and having a good time. The parking concerns, we purchased the parking lot this year from the Elkingtons. Parking lot is sufficient enough according to the code for how many people are allowed in the square feet of the building. We have additional parking to the south of our place that we open up, and we put big signs that tell people that that's where they park. In all of our advertisements for any of the activities that we have going on in Bone, we're very specific to people to be respectful of the parking areas and utilize the parking areas that we have open for them. But we can't control everyone who decides to park along a road. If somebody's there, we go out and we make an effort to get them moved. But for the most part, it's me and my husband and my kids in there running these places. And so you can't come out and be parking cop plus run a business at the same time. There was only one time, to my knowledge, where parking was an issue and the road was blocked, and that was the first Brody's ride that we put on after the store had been closed for 3 years. We were just coming out of COVID. I've never seen so many people show up to a place, and I believe that was just a one-off where people were just excited to be out and kind of forgot what it was like to be out and around and considerate of other humans. We've since made sure that we have a lot more parking available, and we make a very concerted effort to educate everyone to where they need to park. We've partnered with the Bonneville County up with the Parks and Recs up to utilize their parking space to do that. So we've made a lot of effort in making sure that we don't have that be an issue again. With that being said, we feel like we have some really good rules that we keep in place at Bone, but we can no longer control the human condition than anyone else can hold back the tide, if we're being honest. And if you go down to the Mountain American Center, whenever there's an event there, there's people parked all along Pioneer Road down there. So I think it's an issue that a lot of business owners have to deal with. And I think a business owner does everything within their power to make sure that people are considerate and that they follow the rules and that we take care of each other. But you're gonna have those people every once in a while that, it's just like a herd of cows, right? You got the herd that goes along, and then you got one cow that takes off and messes up the whole thing. So that's a human race as far as I'm concerned. We've put a lot into the area, and we have tried to apply all of the rules and regulations that we're aware of that we need to go forward with. We're not difficult people to work with. We're happy to sit down with the Planning Commission and draw out an ideal plan that works for everyone. I don't believe that our intent to revitalize the area and create a space according to the comprehensive use plan where a community can gather and utilize public lands and recreate in a uniform manner is out of line for the area. It's a beautiful space. A lot of people love the Bone area. A lot of people specifically love the Bone store. But a little store is not going to make it in that community, and it's not a viable business option. So we have to do something to be able to maintain it and keep it open for the public and grow with the plan. So we're open to do that with all of you, and that's all I have.
I do have a couple questions, and then you guys may. You said that you acquired from Elkington's a parking lot. and you have enough parking to meet the allowed use, what's your capacity?
So
Right,
the
currently.
capacity inside the bar, we have to have, I think when I did the math, we have to have 30 parking stalls out there for the store itself, for people to be able to utilize that. I can't remember the exact, but it's written in there, and I'm happy to submit that as I left all of that paperwork there.
Do you know what the store capacity is, like number of people inside the store?
50.
50?
That's probably pretty good.
Okay, and you said you had stalls enough for them?
If you plot out the area, we don't have it paved, and we don't have the lines painted and everything, but the square footage of the parking lot out in front aligns with the number of stalls that we need to host I think in the code it's called a bar pub type establishment.
Yeah, because, when you get a liquor license or something for a bar or pub, it has to be served on that premise. Okay. And then I wasn't aware of a landfill up there. Is it on the property or off the property?
It's behind the home.
Behind your property, on your property? Okay, so it's off your property, so that's not really relevant to this then. Okay. And the adverse property value, apparently it was made towards your function, but you're making it towards another. Have you done any studies on, showing adverse property value one way or the other?
No.
Okay. And then you mentioned people need to recreate on public lands. Is any part of yours public lands, or is this recreation that you're applying for all your private property?
So we're just talking about being a rural center for people to be able to come and then educate them what public lands are public versus, there's a lot of private land in Bone. A lot of people
that's
that
more of a
come
global definition. Okay. And then as far as buffers, I read kind of the ones they recommended. Austin, what types of conditions would we typically put, because you say they're looking at an RV park and things like that, what would the requirements for that be if we were to look at including those in findings?
A lot of that obviously comes in the use that's going to be applied in the RF zone, but pretty typically in the RF zone, we're going to address utilities, so that's water, sewer, fire suppression. We're going to address parking through a site plan. We're going to address access. How many accesses do they have to Bone Road? Where is the event access coming in and out? Trash. Where's the trash being disposed of? Lighting. What else am I missing, Michelle? We've talked about this a little bit. Oh, yeah, we'll usually address the hours of operation for the site. When can they open? How late can they stay open at night? When does that, become a problem for the surrounding neighbors? Vendor spaces, are they bringing people in or out? So there's a whole, that's just to give you an example of a few things, but there's essentially a whole criteria we're going to be looking at depending on the use.
Depending on the use.
That is applied for within the RF zone.
Okay.
I've got a question on that, I guess, because I was reading through the RF zone, and in this 15, that's with the additional use, but 13 standard uses. So it's fairly defined what those uses can be. And at this point of the zoning hearing, we're not necessarily considering the use. That'll come later at the development stage.
Yeah, so like I say, depending on if they're granted the zoning, what use they apply for, then that's when some of these different, doing a site plan, the conditions of that site plan, parking, et cetera, that's when all that stuff's.
So it would be more appropriate during the zoning phase to say that the buffering would be conditional upon, I mean, that would be down the road. I don't think the buffering should be part of the zoning.
I mean, pretty typically, you're gonna establish in the zoning that you're gonna provide a buffer between the G1 uses and along the arterial road, because you're changing the zone to something that allows for more intense uses than the grazing zone, right? So you're protecting the grazing properties. But as far as what that looks like, pretty typically that's done on an administrative level, is that they can bring us in a plan and we tell them if it's sufficient or not. So
Yeah, I think it's pretty hard for us to define
yeah,
at this point for me.
yeah, like at the Planning and Zoning Commission, I noticed talked about fences and type of fences, and to me, it's like we need to establish that there's going to be a buffer there, but what exactly that looks like will probably come with the actual plan.
Okay, John?
Yes, sir.
Comments, questions?
No, actually, Brian, Commissioner Reed just spoke to what I was going to say too.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll open it to public testimony. Anybody wish to testify? Other than what we already have on the record?
I'd like to say something.
Sure, you state your name and address.
Corey Steele-N-Jo,
Okay,
1672 Bone Road, same as my wife's. Couple things that she didn't point out in here that I want to address in the two letters that was submitted, one from the Myers and Rockwoods. Come on up there all times of the year and see all the camping going on there, to include on their property. They allow the same thing. I got pictures of it from the elk hunters they bring in there. So they can deny it all they want, we got pictures of it. But they allow camping on their property too. As for the date that Mr. Rockwood put on here with regards to his fence being destroyed, my wife went back and looked at the date the violation occurred, that the man received the DUI. We wasn't even open that day. So the guy may have said he stopped at the bone store. We wasn't even open that day. And that's all I have.
okay, thank you. Anyone else? Name?
Eric Freund, 1420 Bone Road. I think there's a big difference between an RV park and hunters camping out in sticks. I think they're referring to our boneyard that is a landfill. That's interesting.
Well,
Concerned about,
we've already said that's not part of this hearing, so we're not.
Sounds like it is.
No, it's not, and I don't want to get this back and forth going because I sense it's already starting. So.
How about our facts that were wrong in the last deal?
Okay,
Does that have any bearing?
state in.
Fact of, they referred to the store as a post office. It never was. The original store was. That's a whole different footprint. Dances and such. That was at the schoolhouse. It was on that back part of the property with Tom Robinson in the stone now, and that's no longer. Wasn't a concert store. I don't know what this to do to property taxes. I haven't dug into it. Look at a forestry designation. Does that bring the Forest Service into this? Private ground.
I think Austin can address a couple of those, and some of them that were addressed in the prior hearing.
I mean, as far as having ground around you that's zoned RF, as long as you're still zoned grazing, it doesn't affect your personal property values.
Or taxes.
Or taxes, and it doesn't bring the Forest Service into this property. It's just a zoning classification that we designate for places that are more off in the wilderness type areas that need to have some sort of services or facilities or campgrounds or cabins or things like that.
And there is a difference between somebody camping and a campground. But I think it was pointed out that those conditions will be addressed, you know, if there's a use hearing.
Yeah, apparently I needed to be at the planning and zoning meeting, it sounds like. Guess there's not much we can do with this, huh?
You know, you can express your opinion, you know, and I sense.
I got an issue with the big campground being there, and there's no way they can monitor all that, and, or anybody can. I know what happens when you concentrate a lot of people in an area like that, and they're wanting to recreate. They're in on your place, and you got tracks where you don't want them. As far as the buffer zone goes, that won't do any good. I can hear a concert 3 miles away. No, I'm done.
Okay, thank you. There's only a couple more. Any of you wish to add anything? I think, you know, did you testify prior? Anything you want to add to that?
No, I stand by my
Your name?
David Rafferty.
Okay.
Straight across the road.
Straight across the road.
I also represent Embers Creek RFPA, Rangeland Fire Protection Association. I don't have anything to add to my previous testimony other than the Rangeland Fire Protection Association is working on some things in the area too that will enhance, I believe, our ability to help our neighbors in firefighting situations. And that will include home store. It includes all of our neighbors. We don't discriminate against anybody. Anybody that has a fire that they need put out, we're going to be there to help them out. So, other than some things we have in the works right now to increase our ability to fight fire, we're looking at building a fire station up on top of the Dugway, and that's I know a separate issue that we'll be talking with you guys again about. Just to increase our ability to do what our mandate is.
I think we learned a good lesson about fire protection up in those areas a few years ago. So, okay, anybody else? Anything to add? Yes.
Sharon Cohen, 1424 Road, Idaho, 827. I have lived in Idaho, or Boone, basically my whole life. I went to college, that's about the only time I did not live there. I've seen the traffic patterns from the time these guys have opened their concert venues. And my husband and I are the ones that run the cattle around the footprint that you're seeing for part of it, yes. And when we are, I mean, it's a ranch. You've got days of the week they're going to be working cattle, days of the week they're not. On the days of the week we try to do that, we try not to do anything on the days that they have anything planned, because the traffic patterns are just so unreal. So, well, you've either got 2 cars coming at one time, or you've got a line of 25, because here's a slow guy. So that's part of the problems that we have. And when you've got cattle on the road or trying to do something with them, and you've got people trying to get to an event on time, they are not exactly pleasant. So with that being the case, my husband and I, we've got hay that we raise and we bale up, and then we call it the truck. They aren't little trucks, they're semi trucks. And so the access that we have from the fields that we have are right there above the bone store on the Dugway and on Barzy Road. And so both of those places are not exactly easy to see around. So when you go to pull out in front of, onto the road, 9 times out of 10, when you're coming around that flying corner there at the bone store, you've got people behind it. And they go around, they flip off, and like, hi. So anyway, and then you've got the Barzy Road access. It really isn't that much better. you can't see one way or the other, so when you start going up there, the times when they have the events, you sit there and wait, and if you get all the way up to the top of the Barsey Road, and you see somebody coming, you stop, but then you gotta back all the way down to get a run at it again, and it's on gravel road, and if you miss the bottom, there's a culvert there, and so you've got the chance of tipping your load over every time you back down that track. So, the other thing too is Eric and I have been the ones making the fences around the home store. One thing about it, there is a 4-wire fence on part of it and then a 3-wire fence on the other. So I mean, it's not that big of a deal to add 1 wire. And I'm not sure having an additional wire is really going to keep trespassers out and maintain, you know, the way that we just don't want people on the land. I mean, it's a liability issue for one. So there's that. With the rezone, with the possible 150 sites for camping, they're open like every other weekend right now. And we've got traffic on those particular days. If there is a campground that has 150 sites on it, you've got not only the campers, you've got the people, you've got their dogs, you've got their kids. And they're not going to be able to control that many people, in my opinion. So that's where I have a
there we're kind of getting into the area that Commissioner Reed talked about, a possible future use, and I imagine any of those concerns would be addressed with any requirements for mitigation if they're approved.
But this
correct?
is the first step to rezone, so I'm making it known that I am against that.
Okay, well, thank you. Anybody else? Anything you want to add on the record? We'll leave it up to the owner if you want anything to add at the very end before we close. Oh, questions?
Oh, I'm sorry. A little late, sorry. But I just have a question maybe for Austin before we get to the end of it. The permitted uses, I mean, the zone is allowed. Those permitted uses are already allowed, right?
Yeah, they become allowed uses, but there's requirements that they have to meet in order to execute those uses. So for instance, let's just look at the scenario of campground, and not saying that's within they come in and say, hey, we've got the RF zone, we'll do this campground, then most likely you're dealing with some sort of sewer disposal system, whether that's central sewer or having an RV dump on site. If you're dealing with, okay, how are you supplying water? How are you supplying fire water? So those conditions as to what is going to be required in the zone are generally what we set as part of the rezone, which usually includes some sort of central water system, central sewer system, the ability for fire suppression. And then those are all the requirements that have to be met for those.
But they won't come back to public hearing. They'll just be set by your office.
They're usually put in the finding based off the recommendation of commissioners. Okay, but from hearing as to what they feel like is.
And that's where my question was directed to you in the beginning. Because, for example, you use the RV park, typically will require any type of mitigation like off-site parking, any improvements to the road,
arterial improvements, the traffic flows and all that stuff still applies.
Okay.
And I ask one more question. I mean, it's been mentioned in this meeting, the campground, it's also been mentioned, the concerts or the noise and that. Are concerts permitted use in recreational forestry? Because I don't read that it is.
Yeah, through what I read today, I didn't see that those are permitted use of the zone. So I think that's a separate issue that will have to be considered in a separate hearing. Really.
Okay, Okay, so your interpretations, they do not, it is not false, because I didn't read
A separate hearing, meaning a use hearing?
Special
use
Yeah,
permit?
something else to address that use of areas.
Okay, well, that's a good point. Okay, anything you want to add?
I don't know where the 150 RV sites and cabin rentals comes from. That wasn't on anything that we've ever submitted to anyone. But I can assure you that's not the plan. And then I would just address the concert thing. We're the only people that I know of that have been prosecuted for concerts, and we've been through that. The concerts don't fall into the code and qualify as an event. An event has to have 250 or more people over 10 days, and you're not allowed to serve alcoholic beverages at those. The illegal part about a concert is if someone holds a concert and they don't get the proper permitting to sell alcohol at that concert. So just for the record, we've been down the road of concerts to the legal capacity, hired an attorney to prove that fact again. Our activities, we sell 150 tickets. So you have up to 150 people that could be in Bone on one given opportunity to have a concert. I would tell you, if you've ever come up when the girls' camp is releasing from Pasalacoma, there's about 300 vehicles exiting the road during there. So if that's a concern, I think we probably ought to go to the church and talk to them about their operation that they got going on too, because that's a lot of traffic. I've been in Bone long enough to see the traffic patterns, and most of the traffic starts at Bone at about 11 o'clock at night till about 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's a thoroughfare past there. The rest of it is during the day. A lot of ranchers come up there. I mean, there's a lot of traffic that way. A lot of campers come up that way that aren't coming to our place. They fly right by. So to say that we are the sole responsibility, the cause of the increased traffic, I would say is not accurate. But we would sure be welcome to a traffic study. Open to conducting one.
Okay. I want you to address, so it's on the record what the requirements for concerts are.
So the really only place in the zoning ordinance that an event center type concert outlet is allowed is in a commercial zone. Within the commercial zones in the zoning ordinance, there are some codes for temporary events that can happen with non-alcoholic beverages, and those either take place in a commercial or an industrial zone based off of a special use permit from the zoning administrator that is issued at that time. I know that there's been separate dealings with the concerts and the prosecutor, and I think that's, really probably outside of the scope of what we're considering today as far as their request goes, and that's why I said that's probably something that we'll have to address separately outside of this hearing.
Okay. Any other questions?
And I just wanted to clarify about the traffic for the board, just the traffic that we're talking about and road improvements, things like that, is things we implement on all rezones. It's the property owner and their specific use that they're doing. Does that require them to widen the road or to put in a turn lane for campground, RVs, whatever? It's not. There is going to be other traffic generated on that roadway, obviously, for other uses, but we're just looking at that specific section.
Okay, with that, we'll call this hearing to a close, and we'll take the issue under advisement. Austin will meet with each of the three commissioners independently. He'll come up with some proposed findings of fact. We'll get together in an open meeting. It won't be a public, or there won't be any public testimony, but the public's willing to attend. It's not a hearing. And we'll discuss those and any differences of opinion we have, try to work that out, and then make our final decision. So thank you.